I'm sure you are just tired. While lying in the hammock, I thought to myself, if this were true, and if I'm where I believe I am? I paused, walked into the middle of the yard, and shouted, "Louie!" I stood there gazing up into the sky. Nothing materialized, so I guess it isn't Sierra as I had hoped. I shouted, "Louie," again. A few moments later, a large black craft dropped from the sky and stopped 50 feet out over the lake. It hovered momentarily and came right up into the yard beside me. It was Louie, the actual spacecraft I had dreamed of, right beside me. How does one explain that? In my bewildered condition, I summoned all the times I fell asleep dreaming of Louie. The reality of seeing the actual craft of those dreams was mind-boggling. To keep from passing out, I turned and walked down to the lake, putting Louie behind me. The lake provided a calming effect. I assumed that you can't pass out from staring out onto a lake, right? I could not look at the craft. Not yet. I stood there for at least 10 minutes watching the ripples flow into the creek before I felt comfortable enough to turn back and look at Louie. It took another 5 minutes before I could approach him. I walked up to him and stood several feet away to get an overall look. He was sleek and coal-black with intricate red lines along the side, with a glass teardrop-shaped top sloping forward and inset to the top of the body. He had 2 rows of clear windows along the side. I could see a bulkhead beyond those windows. He was at least 75 feet long and over 50 feet wide, the size of a small house, and was hovering 5 feet off the ground next to me. As a sci-fi fanatic, I loved everything futuristic, including space travel. I always imagined myself standing on the bridge staring out the front shield into space, traveling along at warp speed just like in the movies. What do you do when facing this kind of reality? I said, "Well, hello Louie," as a hatch opened in the side and lowered to the ground. No one answered. It made me cautious of the craft. So, I didn't enter right away. I walked around and continued inspecting him instead. Upon closer examination, I noticed parts of Louie differed from what I had imagined. In my dreams, I had only envisioned rough sketches of Louie from various points of a dream state view. In my mind, I saw him as more of an overall black blob, or an enigma void of intricate definition. I believe no one could put all the details together when just daydreaming. Now he was altogether in front of me, with many distinct attributes I had not considered before. Perhaps, Sierra was different too. I wanted to see more, but I didn't have enough nerve to enter at the moment. In the meantime, I walked back up to the porch and sat in the rocking chair. I would not hurry myself as I was still a little dazed, so I sat staring at Louie. I got up and poured another glass of orange juice, returned to the porch in my favorite rocking chair. That chair was getting a lot of use. It had a certain calming effect on me, despite how incredible this was. After an hour, I got up enough nerve to enter the craft. Once inside, Louie spoke, "Hello, Jeff. Where are we off to?" It surprised me because Louie did not answer the first greeting. "I am not sure, Louie," I replied. I wandered around the bridge awestruck, thinking, how can this be happening? I said, "This is a lot to assimilate at the moment, give me a second." He said okay, paused and continued, "Let me know where you want to go, Jeff. I am waiting for your instructions." I said, "All right." The outside hatch led right to the bridge. The bridge was circular inside and below the teardrop dome above. When anyone stood on the bridge, they could see outside in every direction. Up towards the front was a panel of lights, buttons, and levers. As I approached the panel, a couch came up from the floor. That was too funny, but just like me. Instead of a chair, like normal people, I had a couch to sit on. It raised high enough for the occupant to view any direction out of the craft as if you were standing. I had to climb up to get on. It was an 8-foot wide overstuffed comfortable-looking couch. I could see myself lying there falling asleep, snoring as the craft hurtled through space, with crumbs from a box of seasoned crackers spilled all over my face and the couch. A stairwell, at the back of the bridge, led to the galley. From the galley, several openings or hatches led to different compartments. 2 were storage, and the other 3 crew quarters. 2 other hatches led to hallways which ran 3/4 of the length of the craft on either side. Long windows looking out from the craft lined the outer hull. I marveled how cool it would be to gaze out those windows in the darkness of space. I noticed a row of inset lights running along the outer hull, above the windows. The lights were for the hallway in the darkness. My imagination went into double time. Louie was such a handsome spacecraft. I could not believe he was my personal vehicle. He was important in every one of my dreams of heaven. I recalled the sci-fi programs, movies I loved to watch. Now, I stood in my personal spacecraft, shaking from excitement. I imagined all the places waiting for me. Yet, I was too scared to go anywhere. What if I ventured into space and couldn't find my way back, or ran out of food, or water? Now, my excitement became tempered with fear. After settling my nerves, I returned to the bridge and climbed onto the couch. While sitting there, I tried to figure out where I wanted to go first, once I got over my fear. I forgot the notebook on the hammock. So, I retrieved it and returned to the craft. I discussed with Louie most of what had happened. Louie was more of a friend than a machine. He said he noticed something different about me, but was waiting for me to comment. Meanwhile, Louie became suspicious and scanned me. He said, "It's you all right?" I replied, "Thank you, yes it is." I told him more about how I got there, about the notebook. The notebook has been adventurous reading up to now. It has supplied me with, I guess, pertinent and disturbing information. I assumed that was the point, I explained. He asked, "Who wrote it, Jeff?" "I don't know, but someone wrote it for me. I can't explain it. While reading, I'm taken from one place to another. I saw people and places that were only part of my imagination before, and other places and people I didn't recall. Now, I have come to a place in the notebook where it changed to a language I don't understand." He asked me to put the notebook on the panel so he could scan it, hoping it would give him insight about what is happening. Once I set it on the panel, a light underneath turned on and off several times. I became a little worried because Louie kept silent for a while. It startled me when he spoke. "Well, Jeff. What a pickle," he said. Then he continued, "I understand what's transpiring. The only problem is instructions within the book won't allow me to tell you everything I know. That is for your own good, but I understand your predicament, and I'll try to be as helpful as I am able." I asked, "Can I force you to tell me?" "Nope," he replied. When I retrieved the book from off the panel, it converted again to a different language or numerical code. I still could not read or understand it, and complained of being frustrated. "Louie, the book is worthless if I can't read it." Louie replied, "You no longer need it. The book said the rest of your adventure will be in person." I set the notebook down and became quiet for a while, again recalling my experiences up to that moment. That is when I sensed an unnatural need to recall and remember everything I could. I wanted to find a pen and paper to write it all down. I wondered where that desire came from, as I never write things down anymore, but for some awkward reason, I felt a need to. After that desire passed, I wasn't sure what to do. Louie interrupted my thoughts. "Do you want to go home, Jeff?" I responded, "I am not sure what I want to do." Then I asked, "You read the book. You know more than I do. What would you do next, Louie?" He wasn't sure what to do either. I stayed at the cabin for a couple more days, during which I toured Louie several times. One morning, I found fishing tackle in a storage room to the side of the kitchen. Eager to do the natural thing in such circumstances, I took the skiff out on the lake to go fishing. The lake and the creek were a fisherman's paradise. It was the perfect day, and I enjoyed the relaxing peace and quiet. The skiff had a small 5-horse outboard. So, not only did I fish, I spent much of the day exploring the lake itself. The waterfall at the other end was exceptionally beautiful. From its space, I could see that the river began up in a range of high mountains 10 to 15 miles inland. I assumed that because they were snow-capped, the river leading to the falls must have resulted from runoff. The lake only had one exit, and that was the creek beside the trail. In the evening, after an exceptional day of fishing and exploring, while cooking my trout, I saw a blue flash through the front window which caused me to head for the front door. I opened it to find a couple standing there reaching for the doorknob. Embarrassed, I started with, "I am so sorry. I didn't know who owned the cabin. I got lost and ended up here. Please forgive me for making myself at home." I couldn't say enough. Here I was answering their door, standing in their living room, and cooking in their kitchen. Both stared at me, both looked confused. The man replied, "Jeff. What is wrong with you?" They turned to each other as the woman commented, "I guess he has forgotten us." The gentleman answered, "I guess he has." Well, what an awkward moment as I directed them to come inside. Once in, they explained who they were. They were Dana and Bart, my companions, house managers in Sierra. Relieved, I said, "Well, I am thrilled to see you guys. Louie sent for them when I refused to decide what to do." Bart was handsome, bald, goatee, 6 feet tall, well-dressed, and spoke with a strong British accent. He was in great shape. Dana was pretty. She had long dark hair, luminous blue eyes, and stood 5'8". Although she had no accent, Dana looked East Indian with her beautiful facial features and natural dark skin, also in excellent shape. Dana walked into the kitchen to finish cooking the trout. Bart and I sat down in the living room. First thing, Bart stared at me. He mentioned I looked 20 years older. "What do you mean?" I asked. I had not seen or looked in a mirror since I got there. None were hanging on any walls, including the bathroom. "Then," I said, "you mean I look 80 years old?" No, you look in your 40s, he replied. "Then, I am 20 years younger, not 20 years older," I stated. Bart gave me an odd look as he got up and walked out the door. As he left, Dana brought out the fish and steamed vegetables and set them on an end table next to me. "You look fine, Jeff. I am sure you are just tired," she said as she put her hand over her mouth and returned to the kitchen. I became frustrated. Soon afterward, Bart returned carrying a small mirror. "I found this in Louie," he said as he handed me a small mirror. Looking into the mirror, I shouted, "Wow!" I was 20 years younger, not older as both Bart and Dana had claimed. "I am 20 years younger, you guys. How cool is that?" I said with excitement. "How wonderful, Jeff!" Dana shouted from the kitchen, in a patronizing tone. I insisted, 3 days ago, I was in my 60s. Now, I am in my early 40s. That is a good thing. Both replied, "Okay, no problem, Jeff." Both were patronizing me. How could they even understand? Bart told me I needed to get moving. It wasn't acceptable for me to stay at the cabin any longer. He also told me the cabin was from transportation. I always had it set in the middle of this yard. I interrupted, "Transportation? What does that mean? And why is the cabin floating?" Bart responded, "The cabin is a transportation vehicle, and is a craft designed for remote vacation areas like this. It floats so you can place it without destroying the underbrush. The cabin flies like Louie or any other craft. You had mentioned you wanted to put a permanent building here, but you keep changing the floor plans. So, you keep using different crafts. Give it a couple days and you will understand what I mean." This was something I hadn't thought of until now. I had imagined Louie and other similar craft, but never spacecraft in the shape of a log cabin. Bart turned to Dana and said, "I hope this isn't permanent." Thereafter, he turned and said, "Let me explain, Jeff. You've been coming here for at least 75 years, twice a year. During those times you want to be alone. Except for helping you put in the yard, Dana and I have only been here 3 times. Then he told me, if Louie hadn't sent us the contents of the notebook, we may not have come for a long time, or we may not have come at all." I felt out of the loop. I guess I'm thankful Louie sent them the contents of the notebook. Who knows how long I would have stayed in place. Dana told me I asked her to stock the fridge and have breakfast ready for me when I got there. That explains the hot cakes and the Munster cheese. I asked, why are the sheets hanging on the clothesline? Dana replied, I washed and hung them there because I thought you liked the fresh smell on your bed. I noticed the linen closet only had the two, and they did not have that fresh clothesline smell. I would have left them for you because I know you like to wash and hang them yourself, but there was something odd about the instructions you gave us, or rather the instructions you didn't give us. You asked us to perform tasks you don't ask us to do regarding the cabin. Forgive me, I hope you don't mind? I said, no, I knew none of that, thank you. As my future self, I must have known what would happen. I had only instructed them on 2 tasks, but didn't fill either of them in on any of the details. Perhaps I didn't know them myself. It seemed logical I should have, but for whatever reason, I didn't. I understood the book filled them in regarding most of the specifics. Yet, I sensed we were all in the same boat, even if they understood the situation better than me. After several days at the cabin, I knew I needed to get moving. We sat around figuring out what to do next as I ate my fish. I said, I want to go home. Bart asked me, did you mean Commerce? I answered, yes, I want to go home to Commerce, where else would I go? Following that, I inquired, where are we? Bart replied, we're in the northern hemisphere of Academy, in the middle of the Blue River Forest. The forest got that name from a large river that turned bright blue from the cold snow runoff beginning at the Blue Mountain Range. The river was 10 miles north of our position. Those mountains I had observed when out exploring were just the edge of the range. This area of Northern Academy is a dense forest. Including the Blue River, there were thousands of lakes and hiking trails. It is a popular place during the summer. Now, I was surprised that I had seen no one while trekking to the cabin. What an odd presumption. Everything surprised me. The next afternoon we boarded Louie and headed for Commerce. We flew over the Blue Mountains as we were leaving. Just like Bart said, the Blue River was large and blue. It reminded me of the color of a woman's beautiful silvery blue eyes. As we were leaving the atmosphere, my face must have turned green. The force of Louie leaving the planet so fast was more than I could have imagined. I thought this will take getting used to. Dana stared at me with a concerned expression on her face. I didn't need that kind of confirmation. I climbed on the couch and held my head. Then, I yelled at Dana, please don't stare at me like that. You will make me throw up. Immediately after I said that, Louie shouted to get a bucket from the galley. Both Dana and Bart hurried to the galley to find a bucket. I believe I heard them laughing as they were looking for one. Next, there was the blue flash. Bart put the bucket in front of me just in the nick of time. Then, both put their hand on my shoulder and consoled me, telling me I'll be fine. After the second blue flash, they agreed to enter the atmosphere more slowly, which helped me feel better. The atmosphere more slowly, which helped me feel better. The atmosphere